The Koch brothers have made billions and want to ensure the government doesn't limit their ability to make more. Koch Industries is the second largest private corporation in the U.S. They've made those billions through coal, chemicals, and oil, including Alberta's.
We think this is a great opportunity for Koch.
They are the largest foreign leaseholders in Canada's oil sands, and one of their key political aims has been to fight environmental regulations.
Do you believe in climate change yourself, Mr. Koch?
Right here.
Climate does fluctuate. It goes from hot to cold. We have ice ages.
They've funded universities and think tanks, one here in Canada, the Pro-Oil Sands Fraser Institute. And the Kochs have put together powerful advocacy groups with private donors like Americans for Prosperity.
Pick up your torch. Spread the light.
It buys ads promoting the group's agenda. And year after year, Star, Tea Party, and Republican candidates have lined up to seek their support.
Make some noise for Senator Ted Cruz!
Please join me in welcoming Jeb Bush.
Join me in welcoming Senator Marco Rubio.
But as the Kochs plan their biggest political spending spree ever, they're now facing a new world with a billionaire who doesn't need their money.
Let's put this thing away.
And a socialist who collects small donations and rages against the super rich.
That's not democracy, that is oligarchy.
Writer for The New Yorker, Jane Mayer, has written about the Koch brothers in her new book, Dark Money, The Hidden History of the Billionaires Behind the Rise of the Radical Right. I sat down with Mayer in Washington.
Help me understand, you spent 5 years on this. Why do you find the Koch brothers so interesting?
Well, they've been kind of a secret source of power in American politics, and I cover politics, and I just followed the money, and it kept leading back to the Koch brothers.
What money?
A huge amount of secret spending on American politics, hundreds of millions of dollars over the past several decades that are not immediately visible, but when you follow the money trail, it often goes right back to the Koch brothers.
Don't a lot of influential people with money want the government to reflect their views?
They absolutely do, but the difference is that when you have $90 billion at your disposal between two people, you can have a certain amount of more success at that.
What are they trying to achieve?
They are very, very strident libertarians who want to shrink the government, reduce taxes, particularly their own taxes, and they want to reduce regulations on all kinds of industries.
I read in your book that they are the worst emitters of toxic waste.
Well, they're the biggest producers of toxic waste in America, and they're also among the biggest polluters in terms of air pollution, water pollution, and climate pollution. So but that's partly because their company is so big. I mean, most people don't really recognize the name Koch Industries, but many people recognize the products that they make, and they just don't associate the two. I mean, they sell Stainmaster carpet. They sell almost all the world's Lycra. They are the producers of Dixie cups, many kinds of paper towels, Vanity Fair napkins.
How do they win influence? How do they win arguments? How do they stop government?
What you have to understand is originally the Kochs, David Koch ran for office in America in 1980 and got absolutely nowhere because his views and Charles' views were regarded as so far out on the right fringe, they were just really not popular. So they couldn't win what they wanted democratically. So what they did was they funded a kind of an assembly line to change American thinking. What you find is that there are all these streams of money going into many, many, many different organizations that look independent, but really are funded by the same source, the Koch brothers and this network of others they've gathered around them, who are 400 or 500 other big donors to conservative politics in America. And what do they fund, and how do they wield influence? These organizations they fund put out position papers, they are think tanks, they are academic programs, they have professors who espouse their point of view. They have pressure groups like Americans for Prosperity, which is has chapters in almost every state now. And they've got Get Out the Vote efforts. They are acting essentially as a third political party.
Where? Like, where do we see this? Where do Americans see it?
One of the places you see their impact, I think, most clearly is when it comes to policy on global warming. So if you take a look at American opinion, much of it supports doing something about global warming. Yet if you look at the US Congress, it's completely tied in knots. It cannot do a thing about it. And if you are a Republican candidate, you have to say that global warming is not real and not a problem. Part of the reason there's that orthodoxy is because of the influence of the Kochs and their donor network. They're fossil fuel money, and they won't support a candidate, and they will actually attack candidates who take a different position from them on global warming. And they've captured the Congress on it.
How do you know that?
I followed the money. You can take a look at what's happened. 156 members of the current Congress signed a pledge that was created by one of the Koch groups saying they will do absolutely nothing about global warming that costs a single cent. So it's not that hard to see.
Why did they sign the pledge?
Because they wanted the backing as candidates from the Kochs and their organizations.
So they get money, or they get...
They get money, they get support, and their opponents get attacked.
What's happening for 2016? Are they supporting any of the Republican candidates? Are they prepared for the election? What's the spending plan, if there is one?
Well, Charles Koch has said that they've put together a war chest for this election cycle for 2016, that he and his brother and the donor group they've gathered around them have a budget of $889 million, which is spectacular. Even in the amount of money that gets spent in American elections, it's unheard of.
Almost $1 billion.
Almost $1 billion.
How does that compare to what the Republicans and the Democrats are expecting?
Well, that's the stunning thing. This small group of donors has promised to accumulate and spend the same amount of money as the entire Republican National Committee or the Democratic National Committee, and twice what those parties spent in 2012. So you're really talking about a phenomenal amount of private money here.
So are they as powerful as the Republican Party?
Well, you know, the thing that's interesting right now in American politics is any of the Republican candidates on the for president, almost any one of them, would do as far as the Kochs are concerned. And all of the major Republican candidates but one have come to their donor group to beg for backing. But there's one who has not played ball with them, and that's Donald Trump, who is a billionaire in his own right, and he's actually made fun of the other candidates, calling them puppets for being manipulated by the Kochs. So you've kind of got an out-and-out, you know, a break in the ranks here, and I really think part of the reason that Donald Trump appeals to Americans at this point, and is for the same reason Bernie Sanders does. Both of those candidates in their own way are saying there's politically corrupt money that's got too much influence in American politics, and we don't want to play by those rules.
So do you think that Americans are rising up against this idea of secret money behind politicians?
I actually do. I think that that much of what you're seeing about Bernie Sanders' appeal is because he is saying that he's not bought and paid for, and he's got small donors. I just think that it's so deep to American thinking that every one man, one vote, that everybody should be politically equal no matter how rich you are. And whether you're a left-winger, a right-winger, a centrist, something completely different, pretty much nobody likes the idea that 400 of the richest people in the country are going to pick the next president and dictate policy. It's just not how things are supposed to work.
You wrote a big piece about the Koch brothers 2010, and it sounds like they didn't like it.
They really didn't like it, and they were unhappy with me and the New Yorker for running the story.
They hired a private investigator?
Several top people in their company in Washington set up a kind of an operation to dig up dirt on me and hired a private eye who'd actually been the former commissioner of police in New York City to see if they could find anything that would sort of discredit me and my reporting. Well, they came up with allegations that I was a plagiarist, which they tried to peddle to a couple news organizations. But I'm glad to say that the allegations fell apart. They weren't true. The reporters whose work I was supposed to have stolen said no such thing had happened and made public statements deriding this whole idea. But it was tough. It was kind of a hardball that I haven't seen very often as a reporter covering politics and all kinds of other things in America. It's unusual.
Now you have a 400-page book about them.
I do.
Don't mess with Jane Mayer.
This is a hardball playing Klan that is very ambitious, very committed, and I think very worthy of being covered by the American press.
It's been so interesting.
Well, glad to talk to you.
Thanks, Jane.
Okay.